Hello guys, this right here is going to be a little bit of a tutorial for Warframe. I've been trying to get people to play this thing for a while now, and as it turns out, more and more people I keep trying to get to play it are starting to play it. And although there is some tutorials built into the game, they're not always the most explanatory or practically useful. I'm sure as time goes on that'll change. Right now we're looking at about 15.12 as far as what update we're at. So things are always changing. It's still technically an open beta and they are doing all kinds of changes as time goes on. I mean, last year the entire UI got updated, so keep that in mind. These things may be subject to change as time goes on, but at this point I just thought it would be nice to go over a couple of things just to kind of help some people out without having to repeat myself nearly as much. So what we're going to do is right here is your arsenal. You can access it through your menu as well in case you're not the kind of person that wants to walk around your spaceship. And the arsenal gives you access to all of your loadout options. If you want to equip a gun, or if you want to equip a different Warframe or pet, whatever, it's all done through here. The Warframes themselves and everything that you have will level up to a maximum of rank 30. And what this does a little differently in the case of weapons is it gives you points based on your rank. So if I go here into Mag Prime, you'll see up here that I have 65 points. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over here and I'm going to remove all this just so you can kind of get a good idea of what's going on. Now, the reason this says 60 up here is because there's an item in the game commonly referred to by players as potatoes, because it looks a bit like a potato. And right down here in this little options, you see there's actions down on the bottom. And you can see in this case it already says upgraded. For frames or sentinels or even your pet dogs, they will all take an Orokin reactor, which is the gold potato. What this does is it doubles the amount of points you have towards slotting your mods. So in the case of this Mag Prime that I'm using right now, you can see that it's rank 30. Since I have a reactor slotted into it, that means I have double the points, which is 60. So you have 60 points you can spend on all these different mods that you'll collect throughout playing the game, or be given throughout playing the game, or buy throughout playing the game, however you really go about doing it. Each mod has its own little benefits, but we can get into that more later, because honestly, if you're looking for what each mod specifically does, it would be easier to go to the wiki and look it all up, because otherwise they'll be sitting here all day with me reading stuff off. So let me just get into the basics for now. We have, in this case of my frame, 60 slots worth of points to spend. You have 8 slots, and then 1 aura slot is what it's called. You'll notice that some of these slots, including the aura slot, have little symbols. If you take a mod that matches the symbol, let's say, let me find something here that matches. Something like this Blind Rage right here. You'll see up on the top of the card, right in this right corner, it says 7. If I put it in an unmarked spot, it costs 7. So I go from 60 to 53. Pretty straightforward, just kind of math. Now if I take this mod and I stick it into a slot that matches that symbol, you'll see now it only costs 4. Matching a polarity, as they're called, to the polarity on a card will reduce its cost by half, with some rounding involved, obviously. I mean, usually you would think 7 cut in half wouldn't be the same as 8, but it does round up. It's just something you'll have to deal with. On the bright side, that means if I were to increase it to 8, it still only costs 4. So, you know, you can take it as a good thing or a bad thing. Now, if I were to take this mod, which cost 7, and put it into a slot that has a different polarity, you'll see now it costs 9, and it's in red, telling you that, you know, universal color if something's not right. You can slot a mod into a spot that it's not polarized to, and it'll just cost more. In the case of this one, it went up by 2. That changes depending on different factors, pretty much based entirely on how much it costs. For instance, if I put a 4 in here, it only costs 5. If I were to take this 10 slot and stick it in there, it costs 13. So the higher the point value of the mod that you try to slot into the wrong polarity, the larger that increase in points is. And this generally isn't going to be a huge thing, but if you're really trying to eke out the most of your frame that you can, all this means is if you have all these slots full and you have, say, a rank 6 mod or a rank 4 mod, if I pick something that's not the same mod, if you have a rank 4 and you have a rank 10 and you absolutely want to fit something in there, you're going to want to put the smaller one in there because it's going to be less of a cost associated with it. Now, aura slots, this little guy up here, work a little bit differently than your standard mods. These all have their own benefits. In the case of like corrosive projection here, it costs 7. It's a maxed out mod and it's negative 30% armored enemies. Maybe I really like that because I'm going to a place that has a lot of really heavy armored Grineer or something like that. So what I might want to do is, even though it doesn't match the polarity up here, I might want to put this in there. So what's going to happen is you'll still see it's red and the cost went from 7 to 5. And this is where you're getting confused. I know, you're going, but why does it go down? An aura mod, no matter whether it's the same polarity or different, will always increase the available points. You'll see how I'm now at 65 instead of 60. Now, if I were to find a mod that actually fits that aura, for instance, Steel Charge, which is usually a 9-point aura, and I were to stick this in here, you see I now gain 18. So it's kind of the inverse of what a normal mod does. Instead of taking from your pool of points, it's adding to it. If you match the polarity, then you gain double the points instead of losing double the points. Now, of course, the benefit of this is that even if you have a normal frame that doesn't have a potato in it, so it's only got 30 points, you can still get something like one of these auras and slap it in there and get those extra points to build onto. So now we're just going to start throwing some stuff in here just so we can kind of elaborate on things a little bit. So I'm just going to throw some mods in here. You don't really have to worry too much about what they do at the moment because it's not really that big of a deal. I'm just kind of showing how this works when it's filled up.
New alert marked on navigation, Tenno.
Oh, let's see. We'll take you and we'll throw you over there because you're 8, you're a 9, we'll put you there, you're a 9, we'll put you there. And really all I'm doing is I'm just trying to use up as many of these points as possible so I can kind of give you a demonstration of what it's all about, which at the moment looks like it should be relatively easy, being that it's only 78 points. But of course ends up being a lot harder because that's actually a lot of points for the amount of stuff that I have. Stick that guy in there. Oh, what else can we put in here that costs a bunch? So many options. This is 11 points. Let's throw him in there. So we've got it down so that I only have 2 points left.
Navigation has been updated
That's
with new invasions.
relatively close to full. But let's say I were to switch this one with this one. I can't. So let's take this out. We'll slap that there. We'll get rid of this one. And then we'll go back over to, oh, let's just say this guy for 11 points. So I've got 7 points left. Now in this situation, let's say I wanted to fit something that's not going to end up fitting the polarity for this slot. Let's say I want to put fast deflection in here. I have a couple of different choices because I have 7 points left. I can take this guy, I could put him somewhere else because obviously he's not going to work there, and then move something that will work with this polarity in there. Or in this case, I can say slot a small one, like we'll put a 4-slotter here. So depending on how you do this, of course right now I have 0 points. If I were smart about it, I could take a mod that has that same polarity and stick it in there. And of course it'll end up working out better in the long run. Alternatively, if I still want to free up points, but I don't want to, get rid of a mod polarity in the wrong spot, or let's say I don't have any that actually fit the polarity of this slot, I can take this guy, which is only a 4-point mod, and slide him in there. Because since it's a smaller value to start, the additional negative impact of being in the wrong slot is smaller. So you can see I now have 2 points left instead of the 0 that I just had. So of course all of this works in a manner where it works the best if I were to take all the polarities and actually match the polarities up. You'll see now I have 16 as opposed to 0 or 2 or 4. So it's something that can add a lot of depth to a simple system, really, because you're looking at it and you could just put all these in here and they just have to add up to that. But now you have these things where I can take this stronger mod and stick it in there because it actually only costs half of its value. Or in the case of the auras, it adds that value. And this is generally how the upgrade system works across the board. In the case of your primary guns and your secondary guns, you'll notice that there is no aura slot. It's because it's a gun. The guns don't have any fancy ways of holding it or anything like that, or any kind of special aura that radiates from it. It's just the Warframe gets an aura. However, if we go down to the melee weapons, you'll notice that it does have that slot up there. Except, for melee weapons, we're not calling them auras, we're calling them stances. And instead of giving you some kind of a beneficial effect, like reducing the armor of all nearby enemies, these give you access to combination attacks for when you're actually wielding your weapon, sword, axe, daggers, whichever melee weapon it is, when you're actually wielding it as your primary weapon. And you can look at these in the game and the match whenever you actually have the time when you're not getting murdered to do so. And you'll notice that it's generally all a combination of the attack button. Either you're hitting the attack and then you're pausing for a little bit and then you're hitting the attack again, or you're holding down the attack button when you do it. Sometimes you'll have a direction, like you have to push forward in the attack or back in the attack. Other times you'll get a holding down your block button or your aim button, which in my case is the secondary button of my mouse, combined with the normal button. And each of these will do different things. They'll have different effects. These effects are never really elaborated in our menus anywhere. So you can look at this and it'll be like silent acumen. And you're like, okay, so this is how I do it. But it doesn't actually tell you what it does. The only description of anything you have is that there's fierce double-handed strikes associated with this stance. The easiest way to figure this out, if you're really that interested in it, would be to go to the Warframe wiki where all of the information is stored about the game that everybody picks up. And then you can actually read up on these and figure out, oh, at the end of this one it actually has a guaranteed proc for electricity damage, or it'll automatically stun dudes, or it'll knock somebody down, or this one has some nice wide area effect swings as opposed to just a bunch of stabs. Stances are across the board. They do all kinds of different things. Some have more area control oriented swings to them. Some of them are more of a movement oriented thing where every swing just sends you flying across the stage. Some of the stances aren't really that impressive compared to other ones. But the fact that they still give you points when you slot them is the same as it would be with aura. This allows you to get up to about a 70 when it comes to the slot values that you can then fill in with all your different mods. It's pretty straightforward, and they do have a tutorial in here a little bit about it, but that's generally how your points work, how your mod points work. That's the reason to keep leveling things. In the case of your weapons, it's really the only thing that comes from leveling them, as they don't gain stats as you go. Your Warframe will actually get increases in shield, and it'll unlock its various abilities as you level up. But weapons don't get that. They just gain more points for you to use when factoring in mods. Mods can be found all over the place. Bad guys drop them. Events reward them. It's across the board. You'll collect a ton of them. At first it'll be rough because you don't have all those mods, but the more you play, the more of them you end up getting, and then you end up having this huge cluster of mods that you just have no idea what to do with. If you're ever interested in looking at just your mods, they have a station for it, where you can look at all the different mods you have across your many hours of playing the game. But mods themselves are something we'll get into a little bit later, because this primarily is just for the purpose of teaching the idea behind the mod points and how they factor into the game. Hopefully that's a good enough explanation. If there's any questions, you can just leave a comment, and I'll try my best to get back to it and look at it and see if I can answer it or readdress it later on. This is only but one of the many videos I plan on making to help people understand Warframe a little bit better, if they so choose to watch it. Because although at face value it's really easy to hop into, play, and kind of understand what you're doing, there is a lot of depth that doesn't always get touched on, that it's easiest to just find out from somebody. And it's really hard when you're actually in the game, unless you're in a relay just hanging out with all the other players, to learn this stuff.